could you tell us your name and a bit about yourself?
My name's Anna Lumley and I'm the Managing Director at Young Lewisham Project.
What does community mean to you?
Community means to me a sense of belonging, and kind of the love and the support that you find in your near surroundings. I think community can mean all different things, but I think for me it's very much about bringing people together, about working out what your common bonds are, and how we can live, kind of coexist alongside each other in a happy, friendly, supportive way.
Why do you think community is important?
I think community is massively important because it is about sense of belonging, really. And I think for young people these days, it's quite often they're quite disconnected from older generations or disconnected from other people within their local community. And having that kind of sense of wider community gives you a real better context about who you are and the environment in which you live and what else is going on, how much a bigger place the world is than just you.
What work or experiences have you had in the community?
I've been doing community and youth work for about 25 years now. Worked in Southwark for a long time, and now I work in Lewisham, which is where I live, where I lived in for my whole life pretty much. And I love doing this type of work, and nothing gives me as much pleasure in seeing young people do well, persevere after their dreams, and working with other people who've got similar kind of mindsets and just want to have a good, solid community which we can all live in. But I love this type of work. I love young people, and I love, just seeing all the different skills and attributes that people bring. So when I worked in Southwark, it was my first proper job in this area of work. Before that, I worked in property, quite a different ballgame. And I did a master's in community and youth work, and this is how I got into the youth offending service in Southwark. And I started off doing children looked after work, working with children in the care system and children's homes in Southwark. And it was a massive eye-opener to me. Just saw so many things that were kind of really new for me, and how much work really needed to be done with that group of young people. We had a great team in Southwark. We did some amazing work. And as time went on, the project grew because we were managing to bring in more resources and more people. And they created a role for me around constructive leisure, which was how I got into doing more preventative work, which was all about just getting young people involved and engaging in activities in their spare time. And we worked with some of the most risky and vulnerable young people that were in the borough. And we did everything from sports to cooking and filmmaking was a big part of that. This is how I worked with my life from the very beginning. And we had some crazy days in those first experiences of my life work, which was a lot of fun, and also incredibly scary at times, where we were just kind of going to some of the most riskiest places in Southwark and just being like, right, who wants to make a film? And thinking, is this going to work? And it did. It worked brilliantly. And to have young people that were involved then that still come back now and see the films and want to be involved is a huge legacy, I think, of that work that we did. But yeah, there was so massive amount of scope, and there was a lot of money around in those days, so you could really be creative, complete creative license. I had a great manager at the Youth Offending Service who gave us complete creative license about what we did, really, and enabled us to, really was so empowering of for the staff. And then we were able to go out there and pass that on to the young people and being as empowering, as creative as we could be. But the young people, just the journey that you would see them go on during that work, whether it was sport, whether it was the film, whether it was whatever kind of music, whatever kind of thing you were using, you could just see such a massive change and the massive impact that it had. And it's something that I see that's massively missing now, where there's so little money in youth work, where you've got young people who have got really not very much to do at all. And I think in people's head where they think, oh, it's a bit of youth work, young people going out and having a game of table tennis. It's not that, and it's so much more than that. So yeah, we need to bring back more resources into this type of work, because otherwise I think we're going to have generations that just become more and more lost. But yeah, some great stuff happens at the Youth Offending Service. I've got a lot of friends still there, and they still do some amazing work. And Lewisham, I've been in this project for 5 years, and we're an alternative education provider. So we provide vocational qualifications to young people who are mainly outside of mainstream education. So we do motorbikes, we do bikes, we do music, we do cooking, we do filmmaking, we do gardening, everything really is kind of practical skills. And it's about getting young people qualifications and skilled up for either going back into mainstream school or going back into the workplace. But it's also very much about getting young people a positive experience of learning again and getting them enjoying being in a kind of creative environment, you know, trying to inspire that interest in what is it that really does it for you, what you're going to do with yourself, what skills have you got, and increasing their self-esteem and raising their confidence. And it's amazing how in so many different ways that you can do that. So yeah, I'm massively ambitious for our young people, but we've got an awful lot that you just kind of want to get to the starting line. And then you're like, yeah, you know, the world is your oyster after that. But yeah, it's a great project. Got a great staff team here. We see around 60 young people a week who are involved in their vocational qualifications. And we offer a bit of functional skills, English and maths if young people need it. But it's more really about practical skills and valuing practical skills, because not all young people are academic. And you can still have an amazing job and an amazing career and not be academic. You know, there's lots of ways to skin a cat. And we try and open those doors and get young people thinking about, what do I enjoy, what am I good at, and how can I make this work for me.
Who are your community heroes and why?
Oh, my community heroes. My community heroes generally are kind of like the little people that do a lot. And there are so many people like that. And I think this is the beauty of the work that because I've been around for a long time now. It's those people who are there consistently and creatively, and the ones who really, really, really care about those young people and care about making a difference. Those are my community heroes. You know, the youth workers who go out and inspire young people all the time. The gangs workers who put 100% into keeping our young people safe. The teachers who are the ones that support those young people through the times when they've got difficulties at school. There's just too many people that I could mention, but it is just those individuals that go the extra mile and quite often don't really get much acknowledgement for it. And no one is in this area of work really for the money. They do it purely out of the love for young people and the desire to make the world a better place.
What advice would you give to young people or youth workers?
My advice to youth workers is keep inspiring, keep doing what it is that you're doing, even though that it's hard at the moment. Like I say, money's hard to come by, and everybody's in a position where we're scrambling around for little bits of money. And I think things have changed an awful lot since COVID for young people. And the kind of nature of youth work has changed. You know, it's not enough really for young people just to go and hang out. The expectation is a lot higher. And I think it should be. You know, we should be expecting more from young people. We should be making sure that we're pushing, and we are, you know, we want young people to be the best that they can, the best version of themselves that they can be. And I think youth workers do a lot of work that quite often just goes unnoticed. And it's the kind of subtle nuances of the way that they do work that just makes it so effective. And they know, you know, they're the eyes and the ears of the community in so many ways, especially for that kind of generation. And in terms of young people, I think young people have got it hard at the moment. It's hard growing up. It's hard being in London particularly, I think in any big city growing up. And especially in a time when, at the moment, a lot of young people have missed a big chunk of school with COVID. There's not a lot of money around in education. A lot of young people aren't getting the support that they need. But it's about, I suppose, building resilience in our young people. How are we going to navigate through this? How can we build our kind of circle of support around us, making sure that it is that people have got what they need as much as they can have, and are using the resources that are there. And just keep, you know, you've just got to keep on trying. I heard a quote the other day about if you're going to miss the bus, at least miss the bus running for it. And I think that's my advice to everybody is, you know, just keep going. You've just got to keep going. You can't just stop and let life pass you by.
What do you know about the riots in the 80s?
Not very much, because it was way before my time. I know a little bit about the riots. Don't laugh. I remember very vaguely the riots. But I think it's funny because it's that these things that happen. You know, we've had riots recently, and it's very much over the same thing, isn't it? It's like people that are very there's an uprising because people are feeling disheartened about the community that we do live in. They're feeling disconnected with government. They're feeling disconnected from each other in some ways. And I think it's hard to find a way, people find it hard to find a way to make a constructive stand sometimes because of the nature of the environment that we live in and the way that the political system works. You know, you feel quite ineffective sometimes. And it's a shame because I think with any riots or any kind of social uprising like that, there's a massive message that people want to be heard. And you end up losing the message because of the chaos that is created. And I get that it's sometimes about creating chaos. But yeah, I feel like as a community we need to have more constructive ways of dealing with things and having a voice and having taking back a bit of control in a different way. I know that doesn't really answer the question about the 80s, but I suppose that's how I would feel generally about riots.
What do you know about the Windrush generation?
Again, I think there's always there's so much to Windrush, and there's a huge legacy. And again, you kind of hear about the key people that everybody knows about in terms of Windrush generation. But I went recently there's a Windrush museum in Lewisham, and we take our young people from here, and my own children have been a few times. And I learned so much more about, it's the kind of little people and the impact that those smaller people have had in so many different ways. So yeah, just think that there's a huge amount of scope in terms of acknowledging what history there really is. And I would like to see history in schools more relevant in terms of what young people are taught about and what we do know. Yeah. One of my favourite pieces of work has been in Southwark working with My Life. And I remember Chris and his team approaching us. We didn't even have a team at the time. I think it was kind of Chris and Wayne? Chris and Abby turned up at work, and they sent me an email saying, we want to make a film project. And I was like, this looks good. Yeah, we're not really doing anything like that. And spoke to my manager about it and got him on board. And I remember Chris coming in and meeting with Chris, who was the manager as well at the time. And then we just hit the ground running. It was just like, right, what are we going to do? We're going to make a film. What are we going to make the film about? I don't know. We're going to just see what young people want to make a film about. Okay, fine. And that's literally what we did. And it was inspirational work, because I think at the time there was nothing like that at all. There were so many young people that were just out and about, just doing nothing with themselves, or just creating antisocial. There's a massive antisocial behaviour problem at that time, north of the borough in Southwark. And yeah, I mean, we just literally just threw ourselves right in the middle of the mix, and created some amazing pieces of work that, young people turned up in their masses with their families to come and watch the films, the end product of it all. It was so inspirational, and just all the different levels of what was going on. We worked with some of the massive gang players that were from Peckham, Sydney, and the gangs workers team used to go out and do loads and loads of work, getting those young people involved and giving young people a voice in a way that they'd never really had a voice before, and enabling people to tell their own stories. And I know for a fact, when I look back on it, that we changed the lives of a lot of those young people because they had opportunities that they didn't have before. They had voice that they didn't have before. They were making connections. They had a different context. They had a different point of reference. And now, still after all this time, they come back to it. And if that doesn't speak for itself, I don't know what else does, really. But yeah, we need more money. There needs to be more investment in this type of work. What was so good about it is that we had some of the most risky and vulnerable young people involved, which Sydney would go out and gain the trust from, and they could see that this was real about them, giving them a platform to have their view and talk about the things and tell the stories that they wanted to tell. And what was really interesting was at the end, when we went to community networking meetings, when we would talk about the project, that one of the police officers who was designated to the area that we worked in one summer said that summer, the young people that we'd engaged had created a drop of 76% in terms of crime and social behaviour, which was a massive statistic. And subsequently to that, community safety team and the police were giving us money to continue the project. And given now, in terms of the state of play with finances and bringing money into youth work and this type of work anyway, you know, we know that it costs £120,000 roughly to lock a young person up in custody for a year. And for way less than that, you could run a project that would have massive, meaningful impact for those young people and could divert away from that kind of lifestyle. So we need to go back to a model of preventative work again, which is really about engagement, early intervention, picking young people up in their environment at the right time, and enabling us to do that gritty, cutting-edge community work, letting us be in the communities that we know, and the communities that we love and the communities that we want to improve as professionals, but also as people that live in this environment and, you know, are dedicated to the cause. There's such a lot of scope, and I'd love to see more work like this get done.